Welcome to everyone online, and also hello to the folks in the meeting room at Lincoln County Regional Planning Commission. Thanks so much, everyone, for being here. My name is Gabe McPhail, and I serve as facilitator for the Southern and Midcoast Resilience Coordinator Collaborative, which is SMRCC. This is a collaborative of community resilience partnership regional coordinators serving communities in York, Southern Oxford, Cumberland, Saginaw, Lincoln, Knox, and Southern Waldo counties. I definitely want to acknowledge that this workshop is a true team effort. Besides Laura and Curtis, hi Laura and Curtis, who are facilitating in person, we have a really amazing group of online facilitator folks who are here. If they haven't already introduced themselves in the chat, I'm going to invite them to do that. Grateful that you all are here tonight, and our presenters will be introducing themselves when they begin presenting. So our goals for this workshop, which is actually the first in a series that we are calling From Ideas to Action, and this first one, Exploring Grants, Developing Proposals. We have a few goals that we are really hoping that you will be able to get out of this workshop, which is really to hear first about three, well, it's probably more like four state grants that you can use for resilience projects. And then our discussion portion of the workshop tonight is really an opportunity for you to share about your project ideas, give you a chance to work maybe through some ideas in a facilitated group setting, and also to be able to ask questions and think about how maybe you want to strengthen project or proposal ideas. And then we're hoping too that you might see opportunity to collaborate. It might be collaborating with other communities, it might be collaborating with organizations or service providers. So that's what we're really hoping you might see coming out of the workshop tonight. So we'll start things off. Sierra Millay and Lirella Jaen are going to be, they're from MDOT, and they're going to be sharing about both the Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Fund and then the Maine Public Working Waterfront Infrastructure Fund. Melissa Britsch is going to share about the next round of Shore and Harbor Coastal Community Grants. And then we're going to just wrap up the presentation portion with just a quick overview of community action grants, which we suspect most people are very familiar with by this point. At that point, because we have so many online folks, and we figured it would work better to close the hybrid meeting. So we'll do that at that time. So we'll move to an in-person session for a group meeting, and then we'll have facilitated online discussions in smaller groups. So when we get to our small groups, we'll do introductions, and that's when we'll sort of dive into your projects. And our hope is that we'll be able to wrap up by 6 and uh, send folks on their way. And we will, just so you know, have some time after each presentation to be able to ask questions. So, I would invite you as you go, if you think of questions you want to jot down or put in the chat if you're online, please do that, and we'll make sure we try to get to them. If there's anything that we can't answer in the meeting, we will try to follow up on. So just to let you know, think about questions as we go. And the last thing I'll say is we will definitely be, again, sharing out the presentation portion of the meeting, the recording for that, and then any resources that get shared tonight and questions and answers as well. So with that, I am going to stop my sharing, turn things over to Lirella, and Sierra. Thank you both.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Excellent. Thank you. My name is Lirella Jaen, and I work at the Maine Department of Transportation, and I serve as a transportation planning specialist. Many of you know Sierra, and she will speak later on. Sierra and I both manage a few programs in the Environmental Office of Maine DOT and the upcoming grant that is focused on climate resilience. I will provide a brief overview of the Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Fund, and Sierra will speak about the new grant opportunities through the Maine Public Working Waterfront Infrastructure Fund. For reference, the grant processes, they vary depending on the funding. So Sierra and I can only discuss the programs that we manage here at Maine DOT. Unfortunately, we cannot address any other funding opportunities across the state. Next slide, please. For context, the Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Fund was established following the release of the Maine Won't Wait Plan in 2020. Maine Won't Wait is the state's 4-year climate plan that outlines strategies to reduce carbon emissions, promote renewable energy, protect natural resources, and help local communities from the impacts of climate change. Governor Mills announced the creation of the Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Fund in December of 2021 as part of this plan's recommendations. The Maine DOT administers the program. It focuses on providing grants to municipalities, tribal governments, and infrastructure districts to build resilient infrastructure that withstand the effects of climate change. Since the fund's creation, there have been 3 rounds, and we have served and still serving 70 communities that were awarded, and we do our very best to serve all our communities. We created a reimbursement guide and templates, and we are always open to phone calls and Teams, video chats, Zoom, and any questions. For each round, the funding source changes. Therefore, the project eligibility and applications requirements also change. Next slide, please. The first round of the adaptation funding occurred in 2022, and it was supported by federal funds through the COVID-19 relief funds, the American Rescue Plan, better known as ARPA. The Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Fund provides direct funding to municipalities, tribes, and state agencies to adapt critical infrastructures and reduce vulnerability to climate change impacts such as extreme weather, rising sea levels, and flooding. The program objective of is enhancing climate resilience, and it has remained the same throughout the next 3 rounds. Eligible projects included drinking water, such as the replacement of lead pipes, wastewater, and storm water. And there's some of the details about the round that we awarded close to 25 million. We're serving 12 communities. Everything is based on reimbursement. The local share or the local match is between 2.5 to 5%, and the funds must be expended by September 30th of 2026. In the picture, you can see Kennebunkport, the Pier Road Causeway, the rising of the road, and it's almost completed. Other projects were in Anson Madison Sanitary District in the Somerset County, which is also completed, and we awarded design and construction of their Main Street storm drain replacement. Next slide, please. In 2024, Maine DOT launched a second and a third round of the Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Funds, and it was entirely funded by the state of Maine. The second round provided financial support to public entities in the Community Resilience Partnership, or CRP, such as municipalities and tribes were able to apply to enhance their infrastructure against climate change which include, as I mentioned before, extreme weather, rising sea levels, and flooding. Funding priority was given to projects identified through vulnerability assessments or capital plan in the CRP's Community Action Grants. But with the third round, we didn't require that the communities to be enrolled in the CRP partnership because this funding was primarily focused on the December 2023 and January 2024 storm events. Eligible projects included stormwater, wastewater, drinking water, public lands, working water funds, and transportation infrastructure. For the third round, the emphasis, as I said before, was the storm event, so the scope included other items like scoping projects to adapt stormwater infrastructure to handle the increase in extreme precipitation events, construction of stormwater improvement, scoping and construction of water and wastewater treatment plant upgrades to enhance the system resilience and transportation resilient projects. In the picture, we see the town of Stonington, and that is in Hancock County. They are currently in the final stages of their Ocean View Road Design and Construction project, which it was raising the road. Now, Sierra will be speaking about future opportunities in granting. Please take it away, Sierra.
Thanks, Lirella. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the future grant opportunities we have. Lorella did a great job giving some context to the program. So just for a little bit more context to the future opportunities we have, as you all are probably familiar with, the state of Maine was awarded a $69 million climate resiliency grant through NOAA's Competitive Climate Resiliency Grant Challenge. And as a part of the $69 million grant, we have some money towards the traditional Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Fund, and additionally, this new opportunity called the Maine Public Working Waterfront Infrastructure Fund. A little bit of a mouthful, but they are two separate funds. So we tried to really distinguish the funding. So to start off with, I'm going to talk a little bit about the traditional Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Fund. So this program will have $14 million to give. It'll go towards public entities. As Lorella had highlighted, there's no designated funding, and the funding source changes each round. Therefore, the eligibility and criteria slightly changes, but climate resiliency is always the focus and will be in this round. Eligible projects will be scoping, design, and/or construction projects. And this focus really will be on nature-based solutions. So in the previous rounds, we always encourage nature-based solutions, and we do have some applicants like Southport and others who do incorporate nature-based solutions into their projects, but it's not a requirement. For this upcoming round, it will be a requirement. So some potential projects could be stabilizing a coast or inland embankment using a tree or root system or doing a green-gray hybrid approach. So, some riprap with plant vegetation above it. So a mixture of both. It doesn't have to be 100% nature-based solutions. I think nature-based is really can be a mixture of both green-gray. And these funds need to be expended by September 30th of 2029. And as Lorella Nice highlighted, these programs are always reimbursement only. We have just started drafting a notice that we plan to get out on our website, most likely in December. So unfortunately, I don't have any information on the cap for award amounts or further eligibility as we're still figuring that out. But we will post a notice very similar to what we have on our website for the Working Waterfront Infrastructure Fund in December, and then with hopes that the RFA will go live in March or April. We're trying to stagger the RFAs to give communities opportunities to apply for both opportunities if applicable, and also for us workload-wise. So I'll switch over to talk a little bit about the Maine Public Working Waterfront Infrastructure Fund. So as mentioned, we did post a notice on our website in September. It's a little one-pager just describing the program, and the intent of that was really to get communities to think about the future funding opportunities and prepare before the request for application comes out in about late January. The purpose of this fund is really to adapt public working waterfront infrastructure to reduce vulnerabilities to climate change. And eligible properties include publicly owned working waterfronts that provide access to or support the conduct of commercial fishing, aquaculture, or other marine activities. Recreational waterfronts are eligible, but they do have to show benefit to commercial fishing or aquaculture. And private or state-owned working waterfronts are not eligible for this funding. So it is just publicly owned working waterfronts. And then for this round, we have about $17 million to give. So applicants can request up to 75,000 for scoping and design, 2 million for just construction projects, or 2 million for a combination of scoping, design, and construction. It just can't exceed the $2 million. This round will have a 5% local match requirement, which needs to be raised and appropriated by the entity. So that 5% local match cannot come from other state grants or federal grants. It does need to come from the entity, but if there are any remaining project costs, those costs can be covered from other grants. In most cases, that ends up being a higher local match percentage for the entity applying, but if folks do have other grants, they could use that to cover remaining project costs, but it cannot be covered as the local match. We've just received a lot of questions on it. That's why I wanted to go a little bit more in detail with that one. And then similar to the nature-based solution, MIF round, all these projects need to be completed by September 30th of 2029. As mentioned, this notice went out in September and the request for application will open, we're thinking mid to late January. We don't have a date yet, but I spent a lot of time today developing the RFA and we'll be spending time over the coming months finalizing it and working with our agency partners as well as NOAA to get their feedback. And then again, just want to highlight this is reimbursement only, but that doesn't mean the entity has to front the full 2 million. We typically do 3 disbursements, but can be flexible, especially for small communities. I think I'm running out of time here, so I'll just say that this here is our contact information. We ask that you please email the adaptation email address with your concerns, just because now it's Lirella and I managing this program. It's not just me anymore. So it's easier because one of us can just get to the email with your concerns. And then I'll open it up for questions and drop my slides.
Thanks so much, Lirella and Sierra. That was great, super helpful. Yeah, questions. We have a few minutes for grant questions for Sierra and Lirella. Anyone in the meeting room there, Laura, that might have some questions?
How would a recreational pier demonstrate benefit to aquaculture or ... part 2? Was that fisheries?
It was aquaculture, commercial fisheries. Yeah.
So if a commercial, someone with a commercial license uses that pier for on and offloading, for example, would that be a demonstrable benefit that would allow a recreational pier eligibility for scoping funds?
Yes, from the sounds of it, I would feel free to email me too as well with more descriptions. But yes, from the sounds of it, it would be. I mean, I can't tell people if they can or can't apply for the funds, but I do not want to waste people's times and I want to make sure it fits within the criteria. But from what you explained, it does seem like it would be eligible.
Thank you very much. I have one other question.
Yeah, go ahead.
The qualifications for nature-based solutions requiring in a gray structure, there must be vegetation.
Correct.
If the engineers say this is not a place where vegetation is going to grow, but the funding source says you have to put vegetation in if you want funding for this, how is there some sort of compensatory mitigation or restoration within the project that can be justified to get funding for construction?
That is a really great question. Not something we've considered right now, I'll be honest. As you all know, the federal government's in shutdown, so we unfortunately cannot contact our NOAA partners. So I have a lot of questions for them as they're the ones giving us these funds. So it's something I can bring to their attention, potentially mitigation measures nearby the project. I don't know if they will be okay with that. But I think that again is another great point and something that we haven't thought about.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shree.
There's
I
a
do.
question. Oh,
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry.
No, no, go
Oh,
ahead,
okay.
Gabe. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So, Kristen, I'll read your question. Will the Working Waterfront Fund be applicable to riverine communities as well, or just coastal communities?
Yeah, so it is applicable for people who have like brackish water, like going up the Kennebec River. So it will be applicable for riverine communities that see tidal influence. That's a really great question.
Yeah.
And something we can also clarify in the RFA because we've gotten that as at another conference or meeting, sorry. And conference, actually. We've been presenting a lot, so I get some of them mixed up.
Other questions from the meeting room, Laura, Curtis?
Not at the moment.
Okay, great. And online, anyone online want to come off of mute and ask a question?
I will just add really quickly, if no one has any questions, that we've gotten a lot of great concern about a lot of communities are also or already had applied to the Community Resilience Partnership grants, and they're supposed to know in December. We've got some questions like, hey, if we've applied for Working Waterfront funds for preliminary design and we get awarded, could we potentially apply for final design and construction through the Working Waterfront Fund? And I will say, traditionally, we wouldn't, but because we really want to be approachable and have as many communities apply for this grant, if the project meets the intent of the program, it can show that you can get it completed by September 30th of 2029. We don't see any issues with you applying or the community applying for final design and construction funds through the Working Waterfront Grant and then using CRP to first do preliminary design. We just ask that you be transparent in the application and state that you're will have a preliminary design through CRP. This is the rough timeline. Then you'll use final design with our funds and construction. So we do want to be flexible. Ashley and I have been trying to meet over the past couple of weeks, meet again tomorrow to just make sure we're trying to stay on the same page. So I just wanted to add that in there.
Great information. Thank you so much, Sierra. And I'm sure that applies to a lot of people. So that's really helpful. I would just encourage if folks end up with more questions that you think of that you want to jot down, we can certainly make sure we collect those questions. If they're not things that regional coordinators can answer, we can try to get some answers for you. And then as Sierra mentioned, that RFA will be coming out in January. So we'll certainly learn more then. So for the sake of time, just thank you so much, Sierra and Lirella. We really appreciate your time and for joining us. So I know that you are planning to head out. So we really appreciate you being here, and we look forward to these funding opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. I left the
you.
email on the chat.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lirella. Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. So Melissa, thank you for joining us, and we will turn it over to you.
Hi, thanks, Gabe. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
So hi, everyone. My name's Melissa, and I work at Maine Coastal Program. I do a variety of projects, mostly related to working waterfronts, public access, and then I manage a grant. So if you've met me in the past, it's probably from one of those things. So I'll just dive in. I am mostly going to be talking about the Coastal Community Grant and the Shore and Harbor Planning Grant. The Shore and Harbor Grant is administered by me at the Maine Coastal Program. The Coastal Community Grant is administered by Joan Walton at the Municipal Planning Assistance Program. Both of these programs are funded by Maine Coastal Program, and we get our funding from NOAA, but we've always managed them as two separate but similar grants. Joan couldn't come today, so I'm just going to cover the Coastal Community Grant for her. And so our program started out at the state planning office, moved around a whole bunch, and as of last month, we are all together at the new Maine Office of Community Affairs, which is very exciting and I think is a good opportunity for us to improve how we work together and how we get money out to all of you. So stay tuned, things might look different in a year, but what we've got right now is fairly similar to years past. And please also be patient if we're a little slower than normal. It is a transition to move to a new state agency. And as I said, Joan couldn't come, but if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to both of us around this grant, and we'll make sure the right person is answering your questions after that. And just for a tiny bit of history about these grants, I think we've been running them since about 2011, and we've gone through phases of having them really in sync with one another and not really at all in sync with one another. We've been pretty coordinated for the last few years now. And last year, we actually merged these into one grant that was just focused on storm response and coastal resilience projects. This year, we're going back to our more broader and more traditional set of eligibility requirements, and I'll talk more about those in a bit. But one important note is we are still using one application for both programs, which is the same as we did last year. So we'll split up applicants and who administers which contract behind the scenes. But just know that if you have multiple eligible projects, you can submit more than one application to the grant this year. I'll also just do some highlights. We're hoping to open the state FY26 round ideally next week. And then I'll do a quick overview of some of our recent grant projects. And before I forget, our grant is also a reimbursement-based grant. You can invoice up to monthly if you want. I did not put that anywhere in my slides, so I didn't want to forget. Okay, so next slide. So just some key highlights of the program. We think across the two programs, we'll have around $450,000 to give out, maybe a bit more. That's more than we've had in recent years, which is exciting. We cap our max award amount at $50,000. These are planning only grants, so scoping design, concept designs, but no construction. This year, we're having a 10% match requirement for all applicants. That's different than past years, but this year, just 10% for everyone. The match must be non-federal, and we'll accept either in-kind or cash match. Hoping to have the grant open around next week. I can't commit to an exact date, but we're trying to get it out very soon. The grants will be due on January 5th. One key difference this year is we are not doing a letter of intent. We're just, whatever you give us on January 5th is what we'll be reviewing. So please just keep that in mind. We're hoping to have projects start in late February of 2026. I can't say an exact date, but we want to get the money out as soon as possible. And projects must be completed by March 31st of 2027. So you have a bit over a year. If you've had these grants in the past, that's not our normal end date. It's also a little less time than we typically have. It's not ideal, but that's what we're working with this year. And so as you're developing your applications, please be very realistic about what you can get done and how quickly you can get it done. We often have some ability to do extensions, but it seems to be getting a little harder every year. So please try and work within that timeline too, as much as possible. So these QR codes will take you to the grants landing pages at our old agencies. And in terms of eligibility, it's the same as in years past. And so municipalities, unorganized townships, tribal governments, regional planning organizations, or groups of towns are all eligible. However, they must be in the coastal zone. And I have a map on the next slide showing that zone. Out even though the program statement isn't officially live just yet, but we'll fund things including climate vulnerability assessments, design plans for resilient infrastructure. So that could be anything from conceptual design through to shovel-ready engineering designs. And that's for either your whole community or a very specific piece of infrastructure like a public wharf or a really critical road. We'll also fund needs assessments, harbor management plans, or plans to document or improve public access to the coast. We will fund some legal work to identify public rights of way to mudflats or beaches. And also any kind of planning work that identifies hazards and just helps to make sure that we're getting development away from vulnerable areas. So that could include planning for nature-based solutions or living shorelines, or also other types of land use planning. And we'll fund any kind of work related to changing municipal land use laws or local zoning or ordinances, again, to plan for coastal hazards and just keep development away from places where it shouldn't be. and also any kind of work related to improving water quality or reducing the impacts of development on local water quality. And I can share more details about that later. And specific to, we're hoping to release the grant next week. I think we'll do email blasts. You'll probably get it probably a few times from the regional coordinators and from the Municipal Planning Assistance Program. We're also planning to post the grants on our websites. So the MOCA website and the DMR and DACF websites. As our program information is still on our old agency websites, I don't know when they will be moving, so we're trying to just get it in a lot of places. If you cannot find the grant application info, please let me know as soon as possible. We're just trying to work with all of our transitions right now. And the grants are for planning projects only. We cannot fund construction. So this is a map. I know it's kind of big on our website, or small. On our website, we do have zoomable versions. I can help you find it if you need. We also have lists of the towns that are in the coastal zone. We take a fairly inclusive view, so anything up to head of tide that touches saltwater counts. So I think either Elliott or South Berwick counts, everything up to Augusta on the Kennebec and north of Bangor, and then up to Calais on the eastern coast. So if you have a question, if you're not sure, please let us know and I can confirm for you. Then just to touch on some recent projects, we do have a lot of information on currently our old agency websites describing past projects. So if you have any questions, please let me know. And I can tell you more about projects or also try and connect you with the people who did those projects. So just for a few very brief highlights of some recent coastal community grants. We gave money to Bath to do community engagement. They're doing a lot of planning related to sea level rise and flooding in some of their downtown neighborhoods. We gave Ogunquit funding to get engineering designs to essentially set up rain gardens and reorient their main parking lot by the beach. And the goal is there to both manage rainwater runoff and storm impacts on the seawalls surrounding that parking lot. Kittery did a project to look at nitrogen loading in Spruce Creek to try and understand where excess nutrients are coming from so they can try and address those and keep the water quality good. Islesboro did a project to raise a critical road, and they're getting both short and long-term solutions to keep that road viable and help keep their community connected. And then North Haven did a project to look at sea level rise impacts on their main drinking water pond. And then just moving over to give some recent examples of shore and harbor grants that we've funded in past years. Vinyl Haven did some engineering work to improve the resilience of their town wave break. Stockton Springs got funding to do conceptual designs and cost estimates to build a new breakwater. Camden did a harbor-wide resilience adaptation plan. The money went to Shabeek Island, but all of the Portland Islands have been working together to host individual island community meetings and work together to develop a toolkit to help landowners think about how to respond to coastal erosion issues. And then just for another example project, a few years ago, we gave funding to Bar Harbor to create a master plan to help them wrap their heads around what they need to do and how to stage a project to redevelop the former ferry terminal near downtown. Lots of really cool projects in recent years. I just want to give you a sample, but if you have questions about any others, please let me know. Then I have our contact info here. These links take you to the case study websites on our old agencies, and those case studies will move to the MOCA website eventually. I just don't know when or where they're going to be. So please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Melissa. Really appreciate it. It's exciting to have that amount of money to work with. So that's great. Turning first to online folks, is there anyone that has questions for Melissa? Do you want to just come off of mute and ask your question? We'll give it a second if you do. Jana, hi.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Melissa. Thanks for that.
Jana.
That's great. Trying to, if we were trying to advise some of the communities on which of those two grant opportunities is best for them, could you maybe describe like what the major difference is between the two? And if they had an idea, let's say to, be looking, I guess, how do you decipher between going after or which opportunity to go after?
So this year we're just doing one application for both programs. So I'd say look at the program eligibility, and if you think something's eligible, just apply and don't worry about which grant you're going to end up with.
Okay, so it's one application, two different grant funds or two different types of entities there.
Yeah, just a history of how our money gets distributed. We're splitting up who's administering the contracts, but that's more a behind the scenes thing.
Okay.
If you think you're eligible, just apply. If you have distinct projects, you can apply more than once, but don't send like 3 applications for the same project because that's not going to help.
No, but one town could submit 2 different applications for two different projects.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jana. Any other online questions? Okay, well, if you think of something, please put it in the chat and we'll move to the in-person meeting room.
Yeah, thanks, Gabe. We do have an in-person question, I believe.
Yes, will funding be provided for ferry locations that are jointly owned and has planning needs between the town and the state?
I might have to get back to you on that one. But I would say potentially, although it's definitely tricky where you have overlapping ownership. So I might have to get back to you on that one.
Thank you.
Thanks,
So
Sheree. Oh, sorry,
in
go
Bar
ahead.
Harbor, is it safe to assume assume that the Bar Harbor project working on the ferry location was owned by Bar Harbor when you provided the funding?
Yeah, I
Not-
probably should have been more specific. That's the former CAT terminal in Bar Harbor, and it's entirely owned by the town. Yeah. I don't
That's
think
helpful.
we've ever funded a project for like a joint town DOT planning process. Most of the work, like at Vinyl Haven's ferry terminal, Vinyl Haven owns the wave break. It just happens to be right next to the ferry terminal.
Thank you.
Any other? Yeah.
I just wanted to point out your reference to the Portland Islands.
Yes.
Those of us on Casco Bay would take issue with that. Long Island
Right.
seceded Portland in 1993, and Shabig is not part of Portland either. It's a great way to group everybody together, but believe me, all the islands are struggling and we're trying to work together. Most recently, Little Diamond Island had a wonderful event where they brought everybody together to show us how they restored their beach. They are part of Portland. They had to really struggle to get attention to get the right permits. So that was very educational for the rest of us, but we're not all part of Portland.
I did know that. I'm sorry. I'll be more careful with my
That's
language.
okay. I'll just, want to point that out.
Thank you. Any other questions from the in-person meeting room? Okay.
Not right now.
All right. Yeah, thank you. If you think of things, please jot them down. And anyone online have a question that they want to bring to Melissa? Okay. Well, Melissa, thank you so much. We're really grateful that you were able to join us and share this information. We're looking forward to the funding opportunity coming out. Sounds like very soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Well, thanks so much and have a good evening. We appreciate that you were able to join us. All right. Well, as we mentioned at the outset, we're going to take a few minutes to go over community action grants. Likely, these are very familiar to folks, but we don't want to assume that everyone has a lot of experience with them. So we want to, just take a little trip into how these grants can be used for your resilience projects. So we'll start off with just like a quick overview of, what the community action grants are. I'm going to put a link in the chat that just provides, all the information that that you would need to learn about the community action grants. But essentially, You know, these are grants that are focused on building community sustainability. There are actions related to taking actions or for projects related to energy use, transitioning to clean energy, and then a lot of adaptation projects preparing for climate impacts. So projects related to flood mitigation, extreme heat, other public health risks, and community action grants are open to municipalities, tribal governments, plantations, townships, and unorganized territories. But the key is that you need to be enrolled in the Community Resilience Partnership. And so if any community attending is not yet enrolled, you want to talk with your regional coordinator, who you know, we're going to put a link in the chat in a little bit to track down who that is. But I think everyone here is from an enrolled community. So the way the grants normally work is that groups of 2 or more communities can apply for joint projects, or a single community can apply. So numbers for individual communities, you can do grants anywhere from 5 to 75,000, and that amount has increased in recent rounds. It used to be 50,000. And the same with groups of communities. So that's, I think, 2 to 5, and they can apply for up to 175,000 as a group. And again, that used to be 125. So it's great to see that number increase for projects. So funding can support projects without any match, but these projects need to be part of a list of actions that the Community Resilience Partnership shares out with communities. So we'll get to that in just a minute, what those actions are. If your project is not based on one of those actions, there is either 10 or 20% match required. And that cost share percentage is really based on the population size of the community and also the tax assessed value. So there's more information when the on the website, and then also when the request for application goes out, you'll be able to kind of figure out where you fall if you do have one of those non-matching projects. Also, your regional coordinators can talk to you about that a little bit more. And you can have up to 24 months to complete your project. Most projects, you know, if they're smaller, take a 12-month project period, but you do have the option to do a 24-month project period. There is reporting required, and in recent years, as Sierra was talking about, the $69 million NOAA grant that the state has, a lot of the funding for the last round and future rounds for the community action grants are drawing from these NOAA funds. So that also means there's additional federal reporting requirements. So you want to just, you know, be aware that there are reporting requirements for these grants. You know, this is a wide list of community action grant projects that some of the communities in the SMRCC region have done projects on. And there is a new list of community actions. This is as of this summer. And there are 96 no match projects that you can apply for. So I'm going to put a link in the chat. That's a link to a webinar that was recorded this summer. And this takes a deeper dive into what the actions are, particularly these new actions. There are so many different projects that communities can undertake with these various actions. And so you can kind of see, based on what you see on the screen, just sort of the range of projects that people can undertake as a no match project. I will also put in the chat just a link to these actions if folks are, you know, haven't seen the list, they haven't applied in the last round, or they want to just get a sense of the new actions. There are particularly some that include like sustainable waste management pieces that were not in previous in previous rounds. And there were a few also that were sort of combined and things that people hadn't applied for that were pulled out of the list as well. So I just put the link in the chat for the new updated list. One other thing that is just important to consider as you're thinking about developing a community action grant project, regardless of what the project is, every project needs to have community engagement and accessibility components written into the project. So it's important to think about, like, how strong is my community engagement component, both in the development of the project and in the implementation of the project. So it's really a way to ensure that projects have a broad community benefit. So as you're thinking about project development, like, think about really who should be involved in the various stages of this project, like what sectors of the community should be involved, who should have a voice in shaping this project and participating in this project. So ways that we've seen communities do this is like not just involving community members from that community, but thinking, who are the organizations that we could partner with, others that could bring a valuable and different perspective to the project. And one way of sort of navigating this community engagement, especially because we know, like, so many of us in, communities have limited capacity, not really the staff to take on these types of projects. So thinking about, who in the community can we partner with to take on some of this engagement work. Might be a church, maybe it's your climate action group, maybe it's like a local land trust, but think about how to write these partners into the grant. How can they be part of the overall project and have those folks really supporting the engagement efforts. And we really just encourage you to talk with your regional coordinator or your service provider about this aspect of project development. And then one sort of final thing on this in terms of access when it comes to the benefits of your project. Think about being very intentional about who's going to benefit from the project. So making sure the design of your project or the aim of your project is really considering maybe underrepresented folks in your community or marginalized groups within your community. How are they benefiting from this project? And the last thing I'll just touch on real quick is just a few sort of broader considerations in the community action grant. They're really, I would say, just like a great overall tool because you can do so many things with them because they're a no match grant. So I think they rank pretty high, at least in my book, in terms of sort of low barrier funds, even though there is a reporting requirement. But overall, it's a relatively simple grant to apply for and manage. So it's a great tool for getting some of these resilience projects underway. And then, really along that line, we heard about several different grants tonight. So think about which one is the best for the project. Is the community action grant the best for my project? Is the Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Fund planning grant the best for this project? So, there are also, we talked a little bit, or we heard a little bit of conversation around using other grants to combine other grants to make a full project. And so Sierra talked a little bit about that in terms of how your community action grant now could provide the planning to get to a Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Fund design and construction grant. So think about sort of, how do we stack and combine grants to make one full project? So there are sort of pros and cons to this. You definitely want to get a clear understanding from the grant program administrators, sort of, what's going to work. Does this grant if as part of my project, is it going to work with this grant? So it's not always something that works, but make sure that that can happen. And then think about, can I manage more than one grant at a time? Do we have the capacity? Do we need to write in the capacity in the grant? Do we need to make sure we hire someone that can either manage the project or the grant or both of them? So thinking about, an example for how things could be combined. There's, an example might be like you have a road resilience project and, you want to do community engagement, you need project management, you need engineering. So an example might be an Island Institute, what used to be called a Shore Up grant, has now, I think it's a community planning grant. So that could be, for project management. Maybe you go after one of these coastal community grants for an assessment, and then maybe you go after a community action grant for your engineering, or vice versa. So there's different ways to kind of think about your project and how you combine your grants to make a full project or a phased project. I think the next round of community action grants that we expect to see will be, I think, early next year. Likely, I would think it would be around that March timeframe. We don't know 100% yet, but so just something to consider. All these grants sort of come out around the same time. So having conversations like the ones that we're going to be having tonight can sort of help, get the ball rolling in terms of thinking about how you want to plan to fund your projects, which grant or grants you're going to apply for, which ones are going to work best. So I touched on a bunch of different things. I didn't want to just, focus too much on this grant, but I think it's a really accessible and comprehensive grant that can really help support a wide range of community projects.